And as Yellowknife prepares residents to return, fire crews in the Northwest Territories are still facing huge challenges elsewhere in keeping the flames at bay.
It's going to be probably till the snow falls before you'll see the flames die.
Fires near Hay River have nearly reached the town's hospital, coming within half a kilometer of the site. Firefighters have relied heavily on air support to try to push back the blaze, deploying a number of helicopters and air tankers to drop water on the fire. Around 300 firefighters remain in the area as work is ongoing to keep the fires in check. Let's now bring in Caroline Wawzonek, MLA representing Yellowknife South and Minister of Finance, Northwest Territories. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on CTV News Channel.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. It's going to be a good week, I would imagine, for residents who will be allowed to head back into Yellowknife. They have been away from their homes for the past 3 long weeks. Talk to us about the process, and for those who are already going back today, what are you hearing already?
I think people are very pleased to know that there's now a timeline by which the Yellowknife residents and surrounding communities can return. I don't know if I describe it as going to be a good week. I think there's going to be some pretty stressful transitions for many people. We do have a number of essential workers already making the move back, whether by road or by charter flights, so that the community is actually ready to reopen. There's actually quite a lot that goes back into reopening, whether it's healthcare services, the airports. It takes some days to do the necessary calibrations of equipment, to do some of the sanitation work that might need to take place at the hospital for disinfecting. So it's quite a process to get it up and running for a full city, for the capital city to be actually able to welcome its residents back. But as I say, that is underway now, and residents are going to start moving. I'm sure some are already preparing to move, but it's probably going to be a stressful few days during that process.
Probably stressful. So we're talking about roughly 20,000 people who were evacuated from the area. Minister, explain to us, are they all being allowed to come back come Wednesday?
As of Wednesday, the city is considered to be reopened back for the public. So we have quite a number of essential workers who are already returning, starting as of really this weekend, and they are able to bring their families back. The city is considered to be reopened to the general public then as of noon on Wednesday. But there's a number of folks who may not be able to travel by road, and so there's also going to be evacuation flights returning people. That'll be starting on Wednesday and likely continuing for a few days thereafter.
What would your advice be to people who are returning back home? Because you did say, of course, some basic facilities will be available at the start. So what is it that will be available and what will not be available to them?
Our goal really at this point, and it's, the city has the lead on the reentry planning, but then of course is supported by our territorial emergency organization. And the point of having a Wednesday noon opening time is to give enough opportunity so that essential services are operational. Emergency services, basic healthcare services, groceries, pharmacies, the first responders, that will be available as of noon. But as in terms of it being the kinds of level of services, say everything from, there certainly are some medical services that will not be back. We have put out some lists of that, and we are contacting people who may need to stay in the South much longer until those services are fully available. And really, I think at this point, it's a matter of just making sure people stay patient over those first few days, that there may be some things that they would expect to be able to access or be able to go purchase, and they may need to take some time before they're able to do that.
Minister, the Premier has been very vocal on how we need to do more for the Northwest Territories and how, of course, there was just one road leading out of the region. She had a meeting with the Prime Minister as well. If I may, what lessons really have we learned, and what are your expectations moving forward?
That's the lessons we've learned. We're only still, I think, going to be unpacking that. There's tremendous lessons learned here. The Northwest Territories, we're really at the front line of climate change, and climate change impacts the need for more mitigation and mitigation funding to support having more than one main road leading not only out of our capital city, but most communities that have road access have a single point of road access. A majority of communities in the Northwest Territories have no road access, so they're entirely fly-in communities. And it could be everything from rules around that, how we provide fly-in access to better highways and road and transportation corridors. We've had a number of communities that were without telecommunications. We don't have telecommunications redundancy in the North. So, there's a host of problems that we already knew about, that we have raised and we have flagged. And this emergency really laid to bear what those kind of impacts can be when you have an emergency to deal with. So again, not having a telecommunications certainly made it more stressful for people, but likely impacted our ability to communicate. Again, the highway was a major consideration in determining when we should evacuate. Well, a community of 20,000, but there's actually a lot more than that. We've had almost 70% of the entire population of the Northwest Territories facing some form of evacuation this summer.
Right.
And part of the reason for that was because of having to consider that if something were to go very wrong, we have only one road in and out. So these are longstanding problems, right? Having
Right.
a national level of infrastructure access is something we simply don't have in the Northwest Territories. We're lacking our, transportation corridors, energy corridors, communications corridors, fundamental basics, and the
Right.
emergency really laid to bear the impacts of that.
Well, thank you for sharing your concerns and highlighting them once again. Caroline Wawzonek, MLA and for Yellowknife South and Minister of Finance, Northwest Territories. Appreciate your time. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.